Breaking news, Omid Scobie has just appeared live on UK TV for an interview where he's giving an amended explanation as to how the names of the, quote, royal racists were leaked in the Dutch version of Endgame. And he's trying to explain a heck of a lot more. And I'm going to use the words that he's written in Endgame to actually debunk him. Yep, this video is going to be a ton of fun. Hey up everyone, it's me, Stef the Alternate, your nerdy alternative, and welcome to another dose of the Daily Nerd, where I break down the royal news and gossip of the day that's pretty much caught me eye, and oh my goodness. Before we jump into this, just a little bit of a quick word. You might hear my voice being a bit dodgy. I've just come out of hospital the last couple of hours after having an operation yesterday, so I'm still dealing with the after effects of all that and the medication, so apologies. But this is what you've got, and the news don't stop for anyone, least of all, me sen. But with that being said, yep, let's jump into this because Omid Scobie has just appeared on this morning. He's trying to put out a lot of fires at the moment that, as far as I'm concerned, he started himself. Now, everything I'm going to say is all my conspiracy theory opinions or whatever. But yeah, let's jump into the first couple of clips. Let's have some fun, shall we?
Get into the meat and veg of the book, though, if you don't mind. A lot of it feels like a bit of a hatchet job against the royal family. Okay.
So, the first thing, the interviewer says is a lot of the book seems like it's a hatchet job against the royal family. Now, let's get to the second clip and hear what the interviewer says here.
Can't run away from that narrative. It's stuck. You know as well as I do that tabloid nicknames stick forever, but Harry and Meghan.
See, this is where I have a bit of I don't mean to cut across.
Yeah, go for it.
I find a lot of this content quite tabloidy too.
And the interviewer here says he finds a lot of the content in Endgame tabloidy too. So the interviewer is calling Endgame a hatchet job against the royal family and tabloidy. Now, you can appreciate that Omid Scobie is saying, no, that is not the case. Well, consider Exhibit A, guys. Here he says, quote, everyone already knows that King Charles might have preferred a life as Queen Camilla's tampon. Now, this is the sentence in Endgame that is the most insulting, the most disgusting thing that, as far as I'm concerned, Omid wrote in this book. It's absolutely uncalled for. It is totally a hatchet job. It is totally tabloidy. Try and tell me it's none of those things. Try it, because no, you can't. You can't at the end of the day, right? Now, let's get on to the next clip. We are inching closer to his amended explanation as to how the two names were leaked in the Dutch version of Endgame. I'm just going in order here. So let's get to the next clip before we get there.
That's happening. Firstly, I've never used the racist word when in this subject. Even the book makes it very clear that we're talking about unconscious bias here. And I realise that the alliteration of racist royal is a great headline, but that's not the subject at stake here.
Okay, so here he is trying to explain that in the book Endgame, he never once alluded to race, racism, racist royal, right? When discussing the Oprah interview and where Meghan was then talking about a member of the royal family discussing concerns of what the unborn baby Archie's colour of skin was going to be, right? Yeah, Omid, you might want to reread your book because here we go. Conspiracies over damaging leaks also extended to his own personal bubble. When some details of private written correspondence between Charles and daughter-in-law Meghan appeared in the Telegraph on April 21st, 2023, there were worries that the tip-off had come from within. Though fingers of blame are often pointed in the Sussex direction, this was an exchange that both parties wanted to keep confidential. Letters addressing Meghan's concerns about unconscious racial bias in the royal family in the wake of the Oprah interview. Look at this. He doesn't write unconscious bias. No. He writes unconscious racial bias. He puts it in. He puts race, racial. It's there. So for him to say he didn't mention it at all, he might want to reread his book. Now, let's get to the next clip. Now, this is where he is giving an amended explanation as to how the two names of, again, the quote, royal racists were leaked in the Dutch version of Endgame. So here we go.
Primarily a name being named in the Dutch version of your book.
Well, two names. Two names.
But that just seems bizarre to everybody out there because you don't accidentally put in a name and you can't put it down to a mistranslation, can you? It does feel like a stunt to sell books, which I understand.
I wish it was.
Okay, so firstly, yeah, you can't put it down to a mistranslation. Look at my video that I released yesterday or the day before. Sorry, my mind's a little bit fuzzy at the moment. I explain for Omid Scobie to initially say that it was a translation error, but to say then that he never put the names in any of the versions of Endgame. Well, how can there be a translation error over something that was never there to be translated in the first place, right? And for the interviewer to turn around and say, it seems like a ploy just to sell more books, opinion conspiracy theory, whatever, yeah, it does, right? Here we go.
Case.
How did it happen?
It's still being investigated right now.
What do you think happened?
I wrote and edited the English version of the book with one publisher. That then gets licensed to other publishers. I obviously can't speak Italian, German, French, Dutch, or any of the other languages that come out. So the only time you hear about the book is once it's come out in the public domain.
Okay, it doesn't matter if Omid Scobie can't speak or understand German, French, Italian, Dutch, or whatever, right? You develop a final manuscript for it to then be released. You then send it to different countries. They translate it. They then release it in their own language. That's it. You don't need to understand or speak any other languages, right? For accurate translations of your book to be sold in different countries. The only way that those names could have been in the Dutch book, as far as I'm concerned, is if they were already there in the first place in an alternate, at the very least, English transcript or manuscript that was sent to the Netherlands, right? But he's trying to deflect here, being like, well, I can't speak any of these languages. It don't matter. It doesn't matter if you can't speak any of the languages or understand them. But he's trying to deflect because he was asked, how did this happen? He's not answering the question, guys. You notice? Notice as well, he's not saying translation error anymore. Interesting, right? Let's carry on.
I'm as frustrated as everyone else. I make it very clear in this book that I, in every way possible, want to adhere to the laws surrounding this subject.
Okay, now let's be fair to Omid. Yes, he does. At least in the English version, right? So here's the quote here. So when asked by Oprah to say who was involved in this conversation, he quotes Meghan by saying, I think that would be very damaging to them, Meghan said. But in the pages of these private letters, two identities were revealed. Laws in the United Kingdom prevent me from reporting who they were. So let's be fair to Omid. Yes, he does say that, but in the English version, right? Let's crack on.
It's why I've been very careful in how it's described in the book, and it's why I've never spoken about it beyond what I've said in the public domain before. The reality is, though, is that this is information that is not privy just to me. Journalists across Fleet Street have known those names for a long time. We've all followed a certain code of conduct when it comes to talking about it. It's frustrating that now what's going on in the Netherlands with the book that was obviously immediately rescinded and is now being reprinted has happened, and I'm glad to hear so.
Now, here, he's on the defensive, okay? Listen to what he's saying. He's not trying to explain anymore how those names appeared in the Dutch version of Endgame, right? He's just saying it's under investigation. He's frustrated. It's not his fault that he can't speak any other languages. Well, that doesn't really come to play anyway. I've just explained that, right? And, oh, you know, it ain't just me that knew these names. It was other journalists in Fleet Street that also knew these names too. Well, that doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if other journalists knew the names or not. Most likely they did. Fair enough. The fact of the matter is, it ain't those journalists that have leaked the names in a Dutch copy of Endgame. It was Endgame. And the author of Endgame, Omid Scobie. So he's on the defensive, guys. And this is the thing, right? When you are faced with an accusation, how did this happen, right? You want to explain it. You want to provide an explanation. And if you possible, provide receipts, right? Problem is this. When you're on the defensive, to me it's like, well, why are you on the defensive? Why aren't you attacking back with explanations and where possible receipts? When you're on the defensive, it means to me that you are on the weaker side because you're having to defend something rather than attack back to make the other side be on the defensive. Do you see where I'm coming from there? Omid's in a lot of trouble, I think.
But for me, I can only talk about the English version of the book that I wrote and produced.
But are you
and
upset by it, though? Are you upset about it that those names came out when...
Doesn't matter if you can only speak about the English version. Fine. But again, like I said, the English version goes out, it gets translated into other languages, and that's it. You've got millions of books, right? Written in English, right? Translated into other languages. They're being translated into other languages without any issue whatsoever, without any additional information being added to it that wasn't in the original English manuscript in the first place. So yeah, he can speak to the English version all he wants, fine, but it should have been a clear and straight translation into other languages. Not a translation into other languages with an additional bit that was apparently never in the English version to begin with. Yeah, whatever.
You didn't want that to happen.
I had never submitted a book that had their names in it, so I can only talk about my version.
Yeah.
I'm obviously frustrated. I wouldn't say I'm upset about it because, to be honest, I've been operating in a bubble of no emotion for the last 10 days. But I am frustrated about it, just like I am many of the other things that I've seen written or said about the book.
So he is still going along the lines of he never put the names in the original manuscript, okay, of Endgame. But again, let's be very clear of what he's just said there. I never put the names in the original manuscript of Endgame. He doesn't say that he never put the names in any versions of Endgame prior to the original completed approved manuscript that was then sent out. Before, originally, he says, I've never put the names in any versions, right? That was my interpretation, let's say, of his original statement that he put out when this all went down. Now he's changed it slightly to, I never put the name in the original manuscript of Endgame. No, I never put the names in any versions of Endgame. In English, by the way. Okay. So let's go on with this interview because there's a lot more that he said that I'm going to debunk using his own words that he's written in Endgame. A Panika's Boozy Theory, whatever. So let's have some more fun with this particular piece here. Let's go.
Kind of offensive too, isn't it, Dom?
It said Stepford wife-like, and I think that the whole section of the book, if you read it in detail, talks about that she's never put the step wrong, but also that the role does require that kind of stately detachment, and it compares her to the Queen in a very favourable way, actually. But of course, if you compare that to, say, everyday folk, there is a sort of like very reserved, almost Stepford-like approach to the
It's kind of mean.
position.
It is a kind of a hard thing to say.
So the interviewer accuses Omid of being cruel and calling Princess Catherine a Stepford wife. And then it's cruel and not nice, this, that and the other, right? And you've just heard Omid's explanation there. I didn't call her Stepford. I called her Stepford-like, this, that, and the other, that she does have her own mind, blah, blah, blah. Well, okay. So here's the first quote from Endgame to rebut that, as far as I'm concerned. He says, quote, I remember having a similar conversation with Kate at a Kensington Palace media reception after the birth of Princess Charlotte in 2015. One in which she spoke about the challenges of parenting. Quote, I look at my friends and think they have it all figured out. Well, I'm just making it up as I go along, she said with a laugh. I always thought this more frank, real side of the sometimes Stepford-like royal wife was something that others should see more of. So yeah, he does say Stepford-like, but he doubles down on this. He doubles down on this. He calls her natural, timid and introverted. Kate had historically eschewed giving interviews or public speaking, instead finding comfort in engagements that were often led by a host, while she quietly followed, giving a speech from a script or teleprompter. She also favoured outings that involved interacting with children or sporting activities, where it's more about her actions than her words. And then let's go one step further. Here he's saying, put a new glamorous photo of Kate on the front page of a paper and a sales boost is guaranteed. Charles, Camilla and William. Unless it's family drama, not so much. In the first months after her wedding to Prince Harry, the Duchess of Sussex was also a shimmering ornament in the royal family tree. And with her outgoing nature and leadership potential, qualities for which Kate isn't known, early coverage of Meghan's royal engagements were far less about fashion choices and more about her work or her role in the firm. So he calls her Stepford-like, but then he elaborates on this and doubles down. Calls her a shimmering ornament in the royal family tree. Says that, Meghan was more known for outgoing nature and leadership potential, whereas Katie was more known for the new glamorous photo, for what she looked like, rather than what she said or what she did. And that she naturally didn't want to say much anyway and was more than happy just to be the ornament anyway and just be led rather than do anything for herself. Stepford wife. Oh. Let's go on to, guys, the next one, all right? Here we go.
Of course, none of that has made any of the coverage. I think what's been frustrating is seeing so much written about the book that just wasn't true. There were stories about things that I'd supposedly said about the Princess of Wales, Kate, for example, that she only smiles or grins in front of the camera or something. There's not a word in the book that reflects that whatsoever, and neither have
There's not a word in the book that reflects whatsoever that Kate just smiles and that's it. Okay. Consider Exhibit 6,000,001. Quote, after the body image obsessed tabloids tracked every pound of her postpartum weight loss, she was back on the Royal A team for the daily drudgery, ribbon cutting, ceremonial piffle and well-timed photo ops. And she looked great doing it. Always elegant and serene, she wore her role well. The late Hilary Mantel got into some hot water for saying so, but during Kate's early royal career, it almost seemed that appearing this way was Kate's sole purpose for the firm, especially after she birthed an heir. Quoting, I saw Kate becoming a jointed doll on which certain rags are hung, Mantel wrote, adding that the Duchess appeared like a shop window mannequin with no personality of her own, entirely defined by what she wore. A harsh observation to be sure, but also a truth most find hard to swallow. So he's quoting Mantel and he's agreeing with this. Right? Yet remember what he just said 2 seconds ago in that This Morning interview. Oh, come on. Omid needs to reread his book again. Quite clearly, he's doing some revisionist history as far as I'm concerned. He says, like Diana, Kate became a sparkling showpiece for the firm. A symbol of refined beauty and those white English rose genetics the British newspapers love so much. Freya in an Amelia Wickstead coat dress. All style, no substance. Yet Omid completely denies pretty much saying that. Okay. Next, let's go.
We know Meghan was in touch with the first book and sent some advice your
Well,
way.
she wasn't in touch with the first book.
Via an aide.
She spoke to her communications officer, and I discovered that at the same time as the rest of the world.
So it happened.
But
So it happened.
It's the job of a communications officer at the palace to deal with the press.
But if you're not dealing with them, it would be very surprising that any of her staff or aides would talk to you. So people are questioning your sources.
Can I ask you a question? Have you ever had this conversation with people that write source quotes about Camilla, Charles, William,
100%.
Kate? Do they ever get called friends of, mouthpieces of, cheerleaders? Or is it simply because people don't like the narratives that I purport in my reporting, because it makes people feel uncomfortable, and rather than us engage in healthy conversation and discourse about it, it's easier to sling a nickname at me or accuse me of something that is quite frankly not true. But
Again, here, the interviewer's turning around and saying, right, there's a lot of speculation that Megxie is involved in this new book, Endgame, right? Especially after what was discovered with Finding Freedom. You notice how Omid Scobie goes on the defensive again. Remember when I said, when people go on the defensive rather than going on the attack and attacking back the accusation with explanations to shove away the attack and where possible, the receipts, right? When you do that, then, you know, you're going to be more believed as far as I'm concerned than all of a sudden going on the defensive. And again, trying to shift the goalpost, being like, nothing to see here because what about this? Like false equivalency kind of situation, right? Here he's turning around and saying, well, hang on a minute. Do you say the same thing about, you know, Queen Camilla's team, King Charles's team, whatever? Well, that's not what we're talking about here. We don't have to. Because originally with Finding Freedom, he said Megxie had nothing to do with the book whatsoever. It transpired she did. Now, let's be fair to Omid in the same breath. He does explain in Endgame what he's pretty much just mentioned in the interview, that he only found out about Megxie's involvement when the rest of the world did. Now, do I believe that? No. No, I don't. But here he says the emails that Jason Knopf, the communication secretary, sent to the Mail's lawyers in the court also showed that he and Meghan repeatedly discussed Finding Freedom after my co-author and I asked him for input on some topics in our biography. He then goes on and says, it was incredibly frustrating as I was clearing hundreds of media interviews and even 2 witness statements for this very case that the couple did not cooperate with us on the book. It was all completely ridiculous. And he goes on to say, not a week goes by when a royal press secretary doesn't have to ask a member of the family whether something is true or not, or discuss a response to a story. The same goes for when a journalist calls Buckingham Palace for a right of reply on a big scoop they are about to break. It's standard operating procedure, and it certainly doesn't mean the royal is in cahoots with that exact journalist. So that's his response to, you know, Megxie's involvement with Finding Freedom, right? Do I believe it? No. But his message and what he said in This Morning, let's be fair, does correlate with what he did right in Endgame. So, you know, I will acknowledge that. Let's go on to the second to last clip, guys, that we're going to discuss. Here we go.
About me, it's been an assassination of my character. My father's been harassed.
Okay, assassination of his character, right? No, I wouldn't say it's an assassination of his character of what's been going on. It's been, as far as I'm concerned, fair criticism of what he wrote in Endgame.
An assassination of my character. My father's been harassed.
Now, this is the bit where, do you know what? I'm going to be fair here and defend Omid Scobie. I know a lot of you guys don't like that. His father shouldn't be harassed. His father should not be harassed at all. No way, no how. That is absolutely unacceptable. No one should be harassed. End of. Period. Done. No matter whether we like him or not, no harassment.
As well.
And yeah, and I don't want to make light of those, but death threats are almost like the least of my worry.
Also as well, you shouldn't be getting death threats. Again, whether you like Omid Scobie or not, Death threats are unacceptable. I've had death threats. I've shown you guys the receipts from the Sugars, them sending me threats of harm and death threats to myself, right? I've been on the receiving end of it too. Best believe, I've shown the receipts. Omid Scobie, whether you like him or not, should not be receiving death threats. Again, totally unacceptable. Let's go on to the final clip. And this is a little bit of a burn to Harry and Meghan, which I found really interesting. So let's go.
And listen, firstly, I want to say Harry and Meghan don't appear in this book until page 146. I say very early on, they are irrelevant to the future of the royal family. I'm only here to talk about the past experiences and stories.
Okay, so I've read the book. To my knowledge, from what I remember, I do not remember him saying that Meghan and Harry are irrelevant to the royal family. Now, if you guys are able to find that passage, let me know. But to my knowledge and what I've wrote, and me trying to find that, I can't find it. But either way, he's just said on national TV in the UK that Harry and Meghan are irrelevant to the future of the royal family. Now that's got to burn, especially with the most recent reports that Meghan and Harry are trying to get a Christmas invitation from King Charles to hang out with the royal family at Sandringham in December. And they're trying to get back in the royal fold, and you've got their quote-unquote cheerleader here saying Harry and Meghan, they're irrelevant when it comes to the future of the royal family. Ooh, that's got to burn, right, guys? With that being said, I know it's been a bit of a lengthier video than usual on here, but I hope you enjoyed it all and enjoyed the receipts that I was able to bring. If you appreciated this video and you want more, believe me, there's going to be more. I'm not going to let this operation stop me. Make sure you subscribe to join our Alter Nerd tribe, because I'll be honest with you, help us get to 100k so we can get that silver play button right there and hopefully cause a Christopher Boozy meltdown on Twitter. Like, share, comment down below your opinion, conspiracy theories, whatever's. Also as well, if you've got some very strong opinions about this new Omid Scobie interview, and I bet you do, then make sure you send me a super thanks. It's just below this video right here. We can have a conversation about this because it does guarantee a response from me. And until the next time, you guys, laters.